What's going on, everybody? Before we get started here for the ABJ podcast, Tornado Tag, episode 140, the Iron Claw. Let's give a quick shout out to our YouTube top tier members, World Champ, Freak Maniac, Triple Crown, Nobody currently, and Grand Slam Raz. So YouTube memberships are currently turned off. We're working on getting this fixed. So in the future, you guys can support the channel with super chats, donations, and memberships on YouTube. Until that time, you can still donate and tip on the link tree below, as well as subscribe to our Patreon. It's just set up for general support now. There's no bonus stuff. But if you're really interested and you would like bonus stuff, shoot me a message and we'll work something out. Also, merch is available. So until then, go check that out. Links below, or just follow on social media, help and support. But let's get on with today's episode.
This is an ABJ podcast production. Join us. Would you kindly join us at the Cult of ABJ Discord community? We'll see you there. Join us.
Yes, I know what you're thinking. That was the wrong intro music. As we were starting, I realized Tornado Tag was not uploaded to the page, so I couldn't play it, and I don't have the thing logged in to quick upload it. So we just went with the normal podcast music. So you did not tune into the wrong. If you're looking for Tornado Tag, you're confused. Wait a second, that's the wrong music. I honestly think I doubt half you would even notice. But we are here for Tornado Tag. ABJ BP Burke on the call here tonight. Both of us are, at least I am. I'm absolutely physically exhausted.
Yeah.
Shows are a lot of energy spent. But we did some commentary here together this weekend in the Mall of Steamtown in Scranton, Pennsylvania for New Era Pro Wrestling SmackDown.
Steamtown
SmackDown, which was a really good time. The second show of their promotion. We got to work for the first time now at this promotion. Some really fun things happened. We'll kind of get into like what's going on with us, and then we'll get into this. So if it's your first time listening, we have a little bit of banter in the beginning, and then we get into the topic. Just hang out with us a little bit, and then, or if you don't, we'll Iron Claw you. Or you could probably fast forward like 10, 15 minutes if you want to skip all this on the
We're not going to Iron Claw anybody.
Yeah. I mean, I might try. I don't think I have the grip strength. But BP, what did you think of the show?
The Steamtown SmackDown show, a lot of fun. The crowd brought the energy, a lot of fun matches going on, a lot of great. It is one of those really well aptly named promotions, New Era Pro Wrestling, and they are really doing a great job of showcasing some young up and coming stars that are kind of that next generation. We talked about this a little bit on the way to the show about some people, like when we were first kind of getting into this as a little more than being fans and just kind of starting to get that first glimpse backstage, like right before the pandemic, and really get a chance to see some people who are really starting to put it together, who are now thriving, who are now doing so well for themselves, like just really just at the cusp of taking that next step after that first step. And there are some people that we see now that we literally saw maybe one of their first dozen matches. Yeah. And now they are really kind of taking those steps and putting it all together. And it's really cool to see that. It is so cool to see that.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, man. I've been having so many conversations with people lately about my content and the style of content and why I do the content. And then when they hear pro wrestling, they get really weird about it. They're like, why? Like, you're an adult. Like, that's for kids. And I'm like, man, if you really got into the science behind a pro wrestling, instead of just visually thinking that you know what's going on with it, and really appreciate it for the art form that it is, it changes your perspective. And when I have those conversations with people, they're like, I didn't even realize that. I'm like, yeah, but that's honestly every industry you can be involved in. Like content creating, it has a scene that you may not realize, or there's certain aspects to it that go into it that you wouldn't think exist. The music scene, like everything, like there's like a lot of different cool aspects to these businesses, but like one of the things that gets really tough with the newer talent, I knew I was going to tie this in somehow, with newer talent at independent wrestling is understanding maybe some of the older stuff, or understanding maybe how things should be in a wrestling match. And it doesn't have to always be your athleticism. It doesn't always have to be, the things that a lot of the younger generation go for. And then when you see younger guys go in there and just put together a master class performance when it comes to working a limb, when it comes to selling, when it comes to two baby faces who are absolutely loved by the crowd, and then the baby face who's way over more than the other one can swing a crowd to make them hate him, and then the other guy gets over, and just it's not really done with people who are this short in their careers. And I gotta say, man, I'm putting it out there. If you think you have a better one, please send me the footage. But man, so far for me, 2024 match of the year contender for independent wrestling, Trevor Taylor and Ricky Price. Trevor Terry, sorry, and Ricky Price put together a master class in what you need to do at a local independent or just wrestling in general.
Tore the house down. The house down.
They did the high spots when it was needed, but the way they played and worked that crowd was beautiful. It was like I was sitting back on commentary smiling because I'm like, because you can feel when the crowd, the energy changes in a wrestling venue when the crowd, their mind states, you can tell where you almost feel like you've tricked them. You've hid the card. You made the ball disappear.
Yeah.
And you have that moment where like the crowd's like, they're just completely invested in what they're in. And Rick, as soon as that happened for Ricky and Trevor, the energy of the building changed.
It doesn't happen a lot, but there are moments, and this is the most special moments in pro wrestling, where it goes from I'm playing along, I'm playing my part as a wrestling fan, to I'm bought in.
Yeah.
And that crowd was bought in completely on that match. And that is special. That is special. That does not happen all the time.
Yeah, it was done beautifully. I cannot wait. As soon as the footage is out, please, we will let you guys know where you can watch that. Any other thing that really stood out for you?
Big shout out to Luca Mancini for joining us on commentary as that third mic and not skipping a beat. I don't know if he has any previous experience doing that stuff. He is unfortunately on the mend. I'm not saying he should be a full-time commentator. That man's place is in the ring. He's very, very good at that. But in his time of healing, he stepped in the commentary role and knocked it out of the park.
I broke him by the end of the show, though.
Yeah.
By the end of the show, we were all laughing. Yeah.
but no, he did a great job. He was thrust into something that I don't know if Luca's done that in the past, but he was thrust into something that is definitely not his forte. His forte is as a professional wrestler. Yeah. And he stepped in and did an incredible job.
He's Luca Mancini too. So follow him on social media. He's a good human. Like he's a good guy. He's in the business.
He's a bad man.
He's selfless when it comes to what you have to do as a professional to put somebody over and playing the role and doing what you need to do. Like the guy doesn't have an ego about how he's used on shows. He makes the best of every situation he's in. I'm just a mega Luca Mancini fan. I think he's just a really good dude. I'm always happy to be in his presence when we're at a show.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Anything else this weekend that kind of went down you want to talk about? Maybe any wrestling news?
Wrestling news wise, we're kind of in a holding pattern for.
There's one story.
Okay.
Unless it kind of skipped by you, I can definitely see how it did. It was definitely hot on the internet wrestling community. The Tiffany Stratton Twitter controversy.
Oh yes, yeah. It seems like that may have already blown over.
Yeah. It hasn't on the wrestling community. They need something to be mad about this week.
She has believers in high places and will get a chance. She will get a second chance on this.
Yeah, and I guess the match was pulled from TV.
No, they did it. They still did Tiffany and Bianca.
It happened on TV still?
Yeah.
I didn't get to see SmackDown yet.
Yeah, Bianca won. And the rumor heading up to it was that, and this was just the internet doing what the internet does and jumping in the wild speculation. The internet did what the internet does, and they were saying how like Montez Ford changed his social media profiles. Instead of saying father of two, it said father of three. And Bianca was pulled from house shows. So like, oh, the match might be pulled because Bianca's pregnant. And then they did a match and Bianca won, and Bianca was not protecting herself like somebody who, like Becky Lynch, went into WrestleMania 36 knowing she was pregnant and protected herself. They did a completely safe match.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was obviously just complete rumors and complete nothingness. I am going to single out, just kind of jumping back into some other matches that I've seen so far this year, just to throw some loves to some other places. At PPW last Sunday, you were there as well for PPW Thunder Road. GKM and Diego Hill had a barn burner. Ricky Price and Clutch Adams went out there and really did something. Something
that whole card was sick.
Yeah,
great matchups. Dio Bando versus Jason Hendricks.
Yeah,
great match. I love both those guys. Jason Hendricks is so talented, has a great look. He's completely reinvented himself since the last time I seen him working with him in Jersey. But I love that guy. Very, very good guy. The other matchup that I thought was a show stealer, when you looked at the matchup, you're like, wow, I didn't expect that these two were going to do this, and they killed it. But I love both of them, and I didn't realize I wanted this matchup was Rembrandt versus
Mark Alexander. Yeah,
Mark Alexander. I thought
every time we hand Mark the ball, he knocks it out of the park.
He's a tag team guy with Nolan Pierce. And Nolan Pierce is an upcoming guy who's really
TV
turning some heads. Yeah. But don't count Mark out. That guy's just as good.
No.
There's no Sean Marty. They can both be Sean's.
They are on the rise for sure. And throwing some love for another place. AXW had a barn burner on their last show that I had the pleasure of calling, and that was Sean Legacy, who was somebody they've really been given a chance to shine, and he has shown two events in a row. And he had a match with Miles Hawkins last month that was out of this world. At Honor was the name of their last show. Yeah. And then this weekend, the 25th, Sean Legacy, who has been super impressive for me, is just watching him on commentary. He is in a very prime spot this Saturday for AXW against Tony Deppen. So that's going to be an incredible match.
Yeah. MA says in the chat, Alex Shelley versus Timothy Thatcher at Prestige.
Yeah, say no more.
I don't even know how to watch the Prestige, but if you can find a link of that, please send it to me.
That's we didn't
last night. We didn't get a chance to watch it. Oh, you go ahead. I'm sorry. I won't bear the lead. Yeah.
Yeah. These are two people who are absolutely, if we were to just kind of make our dream roster, if we were starting an indie promotion, these two would be two of the first people I'd call, maybe 1 and 2. And if not, one of them definitely would be 1 for many reasons. But it was the Mecca Brian Johnson and Matt Mikowski. I didn't get a chance to see the match, but they were GCW in Philadelphia last night. I say that because it was very close to where I grew up, which is about 20 minutes outside of Philadelphia. Yeah. But they had a chance to hook it up last night for the GCW show, which had a huge crowd in Chester, Pennsylvania, at Harris, Philadelphia. Yeah. I'm going to track that one down because I have an immense amount of respect for both those guys inside and outside the ring, and I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, listen, if you guys have matchups that you've seen at an independent show or something you watch that's maybe not mainstream or you think we should definitely know about it or talk about it, please at us on social media. You can do at BP Burke, exactly how you see it on the screen, b.p.burke, or myself, A Blackwell Jr. or DMs or whatever we have open. Tag us in some fun stuff. We'd like to hear more of what's going on in the scene. If you have any news articles maybe you want us to talk about on future episodes, tag us and say, hey, I would love to hear your opinion on this week. Let's get engaged on social media, not just in the chats and stuff. Let's really start growing this. If we get more people, talking about the podcast, word of mouth. I know the ABJ podcast is very, very variety, and I sometimes people only listen to Tornado Tag and not the other ones, and we appreciate that too. But let's start really growing this. We have some really cool ideas in the chamber. I'm going to kind of tip the hat here to what something you could expect very soon. Next week we are going to be back on. Actually, next week to be determined. If we do it, we might have to do it earlier in the week. I'll let you know. Because I may have gotten an invite. I just remembered as we were talking, like right the second, that I might be going to go see my brother this weekend. Yeah, but we might be home. We might be home Sunday night, so maybe we're still on for this. But I will definitely make it work. Out. But if it's Sunday, we're gonna do Slamboree 94, which I'm pretty excited for. This is a really, really important one.
Very special one for me. Very special one for me.
And we're gonna start a new thing to look out for on the channel. So we have channel reviews, our old show reviews. We're doing a movie review right now, which maybe we'll do more wrestling movies with wrestlers in it and maybe talk about the movie.
No.
Yeah,
most of those are bad. Most of those are bad.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to do that.
Our Urban Commando, you can watch some Urban Commando.
Suburban Commando.
Suburban Commando, sorry. But the big thing we're going to do is a what if series, right? So Marvel has their what if series. You always have those scenarios where it's, well, what if, Tony Stark doesn't snap his finger? What if this doesn't happen in comics?
Yep.
Well, we want to do our own version of pro wrestling what ifs. So we're going to come into a topic and we're going to tell you what historically happened in this timeline and what to expect and what to think. And then BP is going to dig into his amazing, knowledgeable brain, and he's going to tell you his what if story under his terms and bookings and whatever his creative mind comes up with, and give you the what if this thing happened. And BP, I'll give you the floor here for the first episode they can look out for.
So this is one that is based on legitimate rumors of something that was, and there's varying degrees on whether this was very close to happening or not. But there was a lot of talk in 1988. Jim Crockett Promotions is in dire straits, and eventually they do wind up selling to Ted Turner and TBS. But there was a lot of talk that Ric Flair was going to be on the way out. Dusty Rhodes was making a power play and was going to force out Ric Flair. And to the point where some people thought the original SummerSlam, the initial plan when they announced that SummerSlam pay-per-view in 1988 was going to be Randy Savage defending that WWF title against Ric Flair. So the first one we're going to do is what if Ric Flair jumps to the WWF in 1988? Will be our first of these.
That's going to be absolutely fun. And once again, if you're not watching live, or if you are in the chat below, or leave us a review, what are some possible what ifs that you can put out there to give us maybe some inspiration for future content? What if this happened? What if this never happened? Stuff like that. Let's have some fun with it. I think it's gonna be a really fun series, and I think people are gonna like it. So
let's jump back really quick.
Yeah,
let's jump back to the Slamboree episode that we'll be doing maybe this week, maybe sometime in the near future.
Yeah.
One of the things that makes this a good time to speak about this is this coming Wednesday. Agreed. Yeah, Matt Mikowski is. We were on the Matt Mikowski train very early on. Very early on. So May 22nd, which is this Wednesday, it will be 30 years since that Slamboree 94 pay-per-view. It is also the first pay-per-view I was ever at live. It was at the Philadelphia Civic Center. May it rest in peace. I believe it may have been the final wrestling event at the Philadelphia Civic Center. But it was the very first pay-per-view I was ever at. And it was also the last WCW pay-per-view before Hulk Hogan signs with the company.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's kind of shift gears. If you have listened or watched some episodes of Not Cool in High School, we start off with a little bit of bio, like a little bit of the bio of the movie. So The Iron Claw is a 2023 biographical sports drama written and directed by Sean Durkin about the Von Erich family, a family of professional wrestlers who are cursed by constant tragedy. The film depicts the struggles of a wrestling company owner Fritz Von Erich's sons to achieve success their father groomed them for, from 1979 to the early 1990s, resulting in more tragedy. Zac Efron, alongside Jeremy Allen White, Harris Dickinson, and Maura Tenley,
Tierney,
and a few
Maura
other
Tierney.
Tierney. This is why I don't read the names, because I always fuck them up. And
big
other
shout
members.
Big shout out to Holt McCallany, who steals the movie for me.
Hold on one second. Who did he play? I don't
He's
know
Fritz.
the actors. Oh, Fritz.
Holt McCallany plays Fritz.
Yeah. But where am I at? The members of the family titled after the Iron Claw, an in-ring signature move by the Von Erichs. So this was done in 132 minutes. It is an American film. It released November 8th, 2023 in Dallas as a pre-sale tape airing. Then December 22nd, 2023 in the United States. And then February 9th, 2024 in the United Kingdom. Its budget was $15.9 million, and its box office made $45.2 million. It is currently streaming now live on HBO Max.
Yeah, I think it's just called Max now, but yeah.
All right, Max. So if you haven't gone and seen it, please do so now. Before we get any further, we're going to put the scroller up. This review will contain spoilers. We are going to spoil the movie. We're going to talk about the movie in depth. If you're a wrestling fan, I'm sure you know the story, and maybe we'll kind of, maybe if you're not a wrestling fan, we'll maybe tie some things into the movie that they didn't talk about. So I'm going to do a scene breakdown, and then I'll kind of throw it to Brian to kind of maybe add more that we didn't see in the movie, or depict if they did a great job depicting that in that time frame. It jumps around a lot, so it is hard to keep track of some timing, because some things act like in movies, when I hate when they kind of do this, where it's like it looks like it happened the same day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That happens quite a bit in this movie.
Yeah. They make it definitely do that. So the movie starts out with the dad here getting into he's in a match. It's all black and white. He's beating the dog shit out of a guy, hits him with the Iron Claw. Really shows that the dad was a really, really prestigious wrestler. The guy was really good at what he did. He was a top athlete. He was mean. He was brooding. He was a man's man. And then it cuts to him going outside with his two boys and his pregnant wife. And he's not this big monster, fierce, destroying entity that he was in the ring a few moments ago. They go out to a brand new car. The wife's pissed. She's pregnant. They're broke. They're living in an RV being towed by a car. And he said, listen, honey, the promoter says if I want to be a big guy, I have to promote myself as a big guy. I got to be in nice cars. I got to be doing this. I got to be doing that. And she's like, we can't afford this. And he said, I promise you, things are going to be good. I'm about to get the NWA world title. This is kind of what I'm being told is going to happen for me. I want it. It's his dream. He's bloodthirsty for it. So maybe if you can kind of give us some context here, was he that close ever to the NWA title? And when he didn't get it, who were some people that did get it over him?
Yeah, Fritz was a top heel. Fritz was a top heel in the 50s and 60s, and then would go on to greater acclaim as a promoter, and that's where you see a lot of him in this movie. Fritz, I believe, and I could be off base here. I believe Fritz did have the AWA world title very briefly. So the NWA world title was up until the kind of overtaking of professional wrestling by the WWF was the preeminent world title. But you also had the WWF world title, which was through the Northeast. Bruno Sammartino had a big hold on that for a long time. And Pedro Morales, Bob Backlund, obviously. But then you would have the AWA world title up in the Great Lakes area, Chicago and Minnesota. Minnesota was a stronghold there. And Fritz did hold, I believe, very briefly, and I could be wrong here. It's looking like it's not. I thought he did hold it, but maybe he did not. The AWA world title there. But yeah, Fritz was a top heel. Oh yeah, he was the AWA world champion one time. I was correct.
Yeah.
Fritz also was a very prominent tag team wrestler. And I think one of the things that hurt Fritz was the fact that during his heyday as a wrestler, he was an ethnic heel. He was the AWA champion for 12 days. He beat Vern Gagne for it and then lost it to Vern Gagne. So Fritz was essentially he played a Nazi, for lack of a better term. He played a Nazi. He was trained by Stu Hart. He's one of the graduates of the Hart family dungeon, and he was teamed up with somebody named Waldo von Erich, no relation, but they were supposed to be because they bring this up in the movie. Fritz's real name is Jack Adkisson, and he becomes Fritz von Erich, the evil German. And yeah, he was a very successful heel. He was very instrumental in the early days of.
Von Erich was his mother's maiden name or something like that.
I don't know how true that is. I don't know how true that is. It could be, but it was basically a name that sounded very German, and that was the whole thing. They were in the early 1950s, so not that far removed from World War II. They were the evil Germans, Fritz and Waldo von Erich, and he did become a very successful wrestler. He was definitely one of the top heels in wrestling in the 50s and 1960s. He winds up facing Gene Kiniski quite a bit for the NWA title. He was in St. Louis. So, yeah, M.A. Salko in the chat. My brain always mixes up Fritz with Baron von Raschke. Baron von Raschke was kind of exclusively in the Northeast, not the Northeast, the AWA territory. Again, an evil German heel who did the claw. So it's very easy to get them mixed up. But Fritz had a little bit more of a gruffness to him. He was a big man, 6'4", 260 he was built at. Raschke was quite tall, but he wasn't that terrifying presence. And then eventually Fritz kind of settles in and becomes a promoter and has his own little territory in the NWA. He runs Dallas. And eventually becomes World Class Championship Wrestling. And he was a very instrumental figure in the NWA. I believe I should have looked this up before we went live, but I know he was at times like an officer in the NWA. And I think he may have even used Jack Atkinson as his name, but he was very much Sam Mushnick was always a guy who really had a stranglehold over it until Jim Crockett, but Fritz had a lot of influence over the NWA for the late 70s and into the early 80s.
Yep. So let's go to fast forward here, and it's showing Kevin getting up and trying to wake up his brother David. David doesn't want to get out of bed, and Kevin goes out and he does his run. He's hitting the weights in the garage. He just works out. Look like all this guy eats, sleeps, and breathes is his family and professional wrestling. And it's cut between him working out and going to the Sportatorium in 1979. He's taking on it looks like the Sheik, right? I'm guessing it's the Sheik.
Yeah, I believe it's supposed to be, if you look into the credits, it's supposed to be the original Sheik.
And who was the Sheik's manager?
That I'm not sure about. Usually in Texas, it would depend on when the Sheik would come down there. For a while, as long as he could, the Sheik's manager, his original manager, his most famous manager was Abdul Farouk, who would later go on to be the Grand Wizard of Wrestling. Yeah. He would also have a guy, Eddie the Brain Kretschmann, who would come over from Canada, who was the original Brain, heel manager before Bobby Heenan. But Eddie Kretschmann, I don't think, traveled a lot. A lot of times when the Sheik would come down to Dallas, he was managed by a guy who is not really in this movie, but really had a huge effect on the actual events of this time. And there's Gary Hart. Playboy Gary Hart was one of the top, probably the top heel manager in World Class. And even though they make it sound like Kevin was doing this for a lot of it, Gary Hart, during a lot of the more successful times of World Class, was the booker as well. He was the guy who was putting it all together.
Yeah. So shenanigans happen during the match, and Daddy gets involved, and he's, don't make me come out of retirement. And it kind of shows like a little bit of a taste of the wrestling life and taking some bumps. But this is kind of not a throwaway, but it really doesn't have much going on here. And it just kind of shows his path of him working hard, and goes on to then win the Texas World Heavyweight Championship, which is kind of just that promotion's World Championship, but it's not the World Championship. It's not the NWA World Championship.
No, it was the World Championship. It was not the World Championship. They kind of call it the Texas Heavyweight title. It was the big time they would call it big time wrestling before the World Class name. And they had I'm trying to see what the exact name would have been at this point. I believe it would have been I think they may have even called it the World Class Championship, but I'm trying to see if it had a different name. I think they billed it before the NWA American Heavyweight title. Yeah, that's what it would have been called at this point. I don't even know if there was a real match between Kevin and the Sheik, but it winds up becoming the World Class Championship. But yeah, it was called. There were many titles throughout because I think the NWA's rule was that you couldn't call any title the world title. There was only one world champion. It was the NWA World Champion. But a lot of places would have like their North American champion, or in Florida, it was the Florida Heavyweight title, which is a legendary title. It was like the stepping stone to the NWA title. Mid-Atlantic had the Mid-Atlantic Championship. That was Jim Crockett's main title. And yeah, in Texas, in Dallas specifically, because when we say Texas, Fritz didn't control Texas. Fritz controlled Dallas and the surrounding area, which was a huge part of it. But if you go to Houston, it's Paul Bosch. If you go to Amarillo, it's the Funks. The Blanchards had a territory. Joe Blanchard, Tully's father, had a territory. Texas is a big place.
Yeah,
so
huge,
there were.
State.
Yeah, it's a huge state. So you had several territories. You had the Amarillo territory. You had the Southwest territory, which was the Blanchards. You had Dallas, which was the Von Erichs. Fritz owned that territory.
And for the most part here, the NWAs ran like a committee. The title is the world title.
A committee.
And every other promotion was always in competitive with each other, but they always wanted their top guy to win the NWA title because that
yes and no
more eyes on your promotion.
Yes and no. The NWA was really more of a cartel than a committee. The NWA was basically a mob. So they carved out their own little territories, and you didn't cross over those lines. If you did, you would have trouble from the main office. You had trouble from St. Louis and Sam Mushnick, who was kind of the ringleader of all this. So again, everybody had their territories. Fritz didn't run Houston. Houston was Paul Bosch's territory, or whomever came before Paul Bosch. And same thing, if you ran Houston, you didn't do Dallas. The Funk stayed in Amarillo. They didn't come to Dallas. And then if you went a little farther west and you went to like Louisiana, Arkansas, that was Bill Watts' territory. If you go even farther to Alabama, that's the Fullers and the Welches. That's Continental. If you go north to Memphis, that's Jarrett's territory. And before him, it was the Goulas territory. If you go to Florida, that's the Grahams. Like everybody had their own territory. And what the NWA did is if somebody came into your turf and tried to start what has become known as an outlaw show or an outlaw mud show, if it's a low quality one, but the term outlaw meant it was somebody that was coming into an NWA territory that wasn't part of the NWA. And if they did that, everybody in the NWA would send their stars that were all in the wrestling magazines, that people knew their names, and they would load up cards to get you out of there. They would stomp you out if you tried to compete.
Yeah. But I wanted to set that tone because it does come up in the future. But let's jump back into
sorry. Just to finish that thought, as far as being the world champion, a lot of people did, like, you wanted your guy to kind of have the world title, at least for a little bit, to be a former world champion. But a lot of promoters did not want their guys to be a long-term champion, because back then the world champion was a traveling champion. So if you were a long-term champion like a Harley Race or a Dory Funk Jr., Terry Funk had a title for a while. Later on, it was Ric Flair. But by the time Ric Flair did it, you didn't really travel a lot. But for a long time, like during the days of Harley Race, it was a traveling champion. So if Harley Race was around the country defending the title in Florida, in Memphis, in Dallas, in Houston, in wherever, he wasn't in Kansas City where his home turf was. So you had to have everybody else, because Harley Race wasn't on the card a lot. He was going around the country. But you would also it was good money for the person who had the title. And I believe the promoter of the champion also got a nice kickback. So yeah, having your guy, there were financial benefits to having your guy be the champion.
Yeah. So we kind of get down to breakfast. Mike, David, and Kevin are all at breakfast with their parents, living at home. They work at home. They're a very core family dynamic. Even when they're kind of like, the movie kind of depicts them all as adults here. They are, but for the most part, they're still young adults.
Yeah.
Like, but they're still living at home. They're very like even, we'll get into a little bit more about Kevin, about his personality, but what this scene really sets a tone is the dad. The dad he's telling them, hey, this is what the family's gonna do. This is the family's goals. These are my goals, and they're your goals. And he kind of sets this tone as a really strong, hard-nosed dad, but they respect him. They may not like how he does everything all the time, but they're never going to speak about it, not even to each other. The biggest thing they're going to do is they're going to honor their mother. They're going to honor their father. They're church-fearing boys. And at the end of the day, they're going to have each other's back. And that's kind of the like what they kind of sell here. But he openly tells the kids, he's like, listen, this is a wrestling promotion, this family. Carrie's my favorite, followed by Kevin, followed by David, followed by Mike. And
then the other one's so far down, he's not even in the movie.
Yeah, he's not even in the movie. He's so far off that list. But and he kind of sets a tone, and he tries to develop a sibling rivalry that, at least depicted in this movie, never really happens. They never really, even though the family, it shows the struggles of Kevin a little bit here, where he falls up and down the card, and he kind of has to take a backseat to his brother. At the end of the day, he's upset for himself, but he's happy for his brothers. And that's kind of crazy that the dad is setting that tone in the family, but the brothers don't ever really bite into it, which is very, very, it's very telling of how good these kids that they were as brothers. But Kerry's going to the Olympics. He's training to go to Moscow at the time, and according to the dad, Kevin just won the Texas Championship. What else we got here? And David's about to debut as a professional wrestler.
David is about to come in as a big surprise at the next show.
Yeah. So it shows, like I said, the strong family structure. Dad definitely not great with his emotions, and it's very what we would say now toxic masculine. But it's a very pro wrestling household. He once again he was trained by Stu, and you could definitely see some of his trainer coming through him, like tough love. Like, you get good by getting tough. You know what I mean? And he's kind of instilling that on to the youngest brother, Mike. And even to the point where he kind of goes to his mom and he's like, listen, Mom, you got to talk to Dad. He's too hard on Mike. And she goes, right, that's not my problem. They'll figure it out.
And one of the things this movie, and we'll talk about it as we go on, one of the things this movie does very well, that is something that has been said by pretty much everybody, is Mike wasn't really into the wrestling thing. Mike had, and let's touch on something we just talked about very briefly. There is a fifth Von Erich, well, there's actually 6 Von Erich brothers, and they do talk about Jack Jr., the oldest brother, who was died in an accident when he was 5 years old. He was electrocuted. Yeah. But that happens well before the events of the most of the Iron Claw. That the other brothers, after the oldest, Jack Jr., who died at a very young age, there are in real life. This is, again, talking about the differences between what's presented in the Iron Claw and what is really happening. There is Kevin, there is David, there's Kerry, there is Mike, but there is a fifth brother, Chris Von Erich, who is not in this movie. This movie basically acts like he does not exist. And I know the guy who did this movie, the guy who wrote and directed the Iron Claw, has said like that was probably the most difficult decision he has made in creatively in writing something when he wrote this, just because he felt like it would have been too much tragedy to have another spoiler. A lot of these brothers die. He felt like it would have been too much tragedy to have another brother. Again, and Mike did, or I'm sorry, not Mike. Mike's in the movie. Chris did pass away. Chris did kill himself.
Yeah. And we will definitely give Chris his due towards the end of this podcast, and we'll talk about the movie. But towards the end, we will give Chris his due about what he fits into a lot of the story and what type of person he was before. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But it shows after breakfast. It kind of sets that tone that Mike is kind of a lost soul. He doesn't really know what he wants to do. It talks about him eating a lot. That's kind of the biggest character. They tell him he just always wants to eat, but he can't really put on a lot of muscle. But he kind of. One thing I will say with the movie that kind of threw me off a little bit I'll get into it a little more. I think when actually we can just talk about it a little bit now. The casting of this movie was tough, right? I think everyone did a good job depicting who they were supposed to be, but I always seen David as taller and bigger. I felt like Dave too tall and too small, if that makes sense. Now, maybe that's just my brain of how I feel like I've seen them in photos, because I didn't watch them on TV all the time. I feel Mike was portrayed pretty well for the most part. I think as Zac Efron as Kevin, I feel I would have swapped Kevin for Carrie. I agree. I think the kid who was in Shameless should have been Kevin.
Jeremy Allen White,
and he's a great actor, fantastic actor. But I feel like Zac Efron would have been a better Carrie than a Kevin.
Yeah, I didn't think Zac Efron had a bad performance here. It just,
no, not at all.
Looks wise, he was jacked. He was in amazing shape for this. Not that Kevin Von Erich was like a beanpole, like, because I thought back, like, Kevin was a little more lanky. Then you look at pictures of Kevin, like, no, he wasn't. He was a big dude.
He was more caught up than he was bulky.
Yeah, he was in excellent shape, but Carrie was
built like the Ultimate Warrior.
Right. Carrie, like, I would have, and I understand why they didn't, because the Kevin Von Erich role is the lead role of this film. Zac Efron is the biggest movie star in this movie. So it's all about selling tickets. So I understand why they did it, but I would have flipped and had Jeremy Allen White as Kevin and Zac Efron as Carrie.
Yeah. So it kind of cuts to Mike, and he's in a garage with his bunch of his buddies, and he's singing, and he's playing guitar, and they kind of set a tone of like, "Oh, Mom, does Mom know you're doing this? Like, he's not supposed to be doing this." Like, they know he's a musician in the family, because the dad, we'll get into that a little bit later, but they think he's in like orchestra. They don't think he's doing rock and roll. Because like, once again,
devil's music.
That's a devil's music. He's in a Christian family here. But he's good at it. Like the lyrics to his song that he wrote were pretty decent. Like he's not terrible on the guitar. Like he has promise to possibly being a musician. Like he's really good at what he's doing here for being as young as he is. But it's definitely set tone right there that this is top secret. We don't talk about this. Then we get into the setup versus Gino and the Bruiser versus
Bruiser Brody.
Bruiser Brody versus Kevin, and then what would be the debut of David Von Erich. It shows him doing a promo talking about his mystery partner.
Kevin doing a promo.
Yeah, Kevin's on the mic, and he's not good.
Unfortunately, this is true. Kevin Von Erich, not known for his ability to talk.
Yeah.
Of the brothers, this is something the movie gets right. Of the brothers, the best talker was David. Yeah,
and probably the reason we'll get into a little while later why David surpasses his brother probably rather quickly. Mm-hmm. The ring announcer guy, who is this supposed to be?
I forget the man's name. He was a legitimately a very good.
I feel like they were trying to make him feel important, but not really. Make it about him.
I want to say not David Manning. David Manning was somebody completely different. Bill Mercer. Bill Mercer was a commentator. Okay. David Manning was a referee. Bill Mercer was he was an actual, like a lot of wrestling commentators back then. Bill Mercer's a real person. He wasn't made up for the movie, and he was a newscaster, and he was a fixture in Texas, and actually was on TV covering the JFK assassination in Dallas where it happened.
Wow. Then we cut to after the match. Went really well. David's a hit. People like David. Mm-hmm. They like him in the ring.
They like him on the mic too. He grabs the mic and he's giving.
Not yet. He hasn't grabbed the mic.
Well, okay. You're right.
Yeah, that's not yet. So then it kind of cuts to outside, and Kevin meets what now will be later his wife Pam. But she has to kind of ask him out. He's really, really socially awkward. He doesn't really know how to talk to women. He's
very sheltered.
He's very sheltered. He's jacked. He looks like a god. And
it's Zac Efron.
Yeah, but he doesn't know how to talk to women. Like he's really awkward, and he kind of talks about that. And Pam is like almost like throwing herself at him, but also still kind of being respectful. One of the things with this scene, and we were kind of watching about it in our watch throughs, his eye is like swollen completely shut. So I don't know if there's a bonus scene where he takes a legit shot.
Efron might have gotten caught with something, yeah.
Yeah, but his eye is like closed. Like
they said like him and Chavo would work like 12-minute matches. Like Zach did a lot of wrestling. So Zach might have just gotten like a bump or a bruise that they couldn't really cover up. They won. And Pam is played by Lily James. If you've ever seen, I think the one thing I knew her from was Baby Driver, the movie Baby Driver. She is the love interest, Deborah in Baby Driver.
Yeah. So after this, David joining, a huge boost in the ratings. People are into David. The TV ratings are up. Is it just David? Is it good booking? Who knows? But they're kind of making it seem like David's becoming the apple of the eye of the fans, and David popping in as this. He doesn't really show, but he's a brooding guy. He's a lot bigger, but he's just as athletic as his brother. He's something new. And probably, Kevin's really good and they love him, and he's popular, but maybe that lack of charisma, that lack of mic skills is what's kind of holding Kevin back from being that megastar that he wants to be. Everything about Kevin is a megastar. His body, his look, his work ethic, lack of charisma. He's a little weird. He's a little different. He's, he can't really get over. Even today, like Kevin showed up on TV recently and he's just kind of like, like he's deadpan, but this the boost in ratings is getting some eyes on them, and they're going to get a Saturday night TV deal with ESPN. And the dad's like, listen, the guy kind of says to him, we're getting a TV deal here. If we can find a way to get the world championship on our roster, we will be the biggest wrestling promotion in the world. Like we will be one of the top people that people are talking about, and we need that world championship to blow up. And dad kind of looks is like, I think that guy's going to be David. He's mentally shift gears that he's going to the next son.
Yeah, David is, And it's not just Fritz here. David was looked at by a lot of the NWA as a guy where he could be somebody that gets a huge spot.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing they always said was you could only be the NWA World Champion long term. Like even Dusty was the greatest babyface that ever lived. He was only the champion for a few weeks here and there. This was the days of the idea of the NWA was WWF was where the babyface champion was there for a long time. Like Hogan was champion for 4 years. Backlund was there for 5 years. Bruno had 2 reigns that were combined to like 11 years. They always had a babyface champion in the Northeast. But in the NWA, because again, they're only stopping by that territory. So the idea was you build up a babyface to go up against that traveling heel champion, and then the babyface would get screwed by hook or by crook. That traveling heel champion would escape with the title, but your babyface just got the rub by being against the champion. So
yeah,
David actually does. They don't really cover this in the movie. I think they said David's on the road is essentially what they said. But
yeah, well, I'll get to that in a moment.
David does travel. Yeah, some of the stuff is it kind of is a little disjointed from the film.
Yeah.
But for real, David was a heel in Florida. He went to Florida, which was a territory you really had to prove yourself because it was a hot territory. Eddie Graham was like the genius of professional wrestling, and David was a heel in Florida in the early 1980s. So yeah, he was very much a guy. He went to New York for a little bit. He was the one that seemed like, okay, yeah, Kevin could be a huge draw in Texas. But at least initially, David was the one where it's like David was more of that old school of he could be the bad guy. He could be the guy who could talk them into the seats and he could still work. So, David was very much considered a likely future world champion. Yeah.
So now we're at the dinner scene with Kevin and Pam. And one of the biggest things, he kind of throws an Easter egg out here. And I'll throw it to you in a moment. But she's like, you're pretty much loved everywhere. You're a celebrity. He goes, yeah, they hate us in Missouri. So I don't know if you know if there's a story or anything behind that, or maybe we could dive into that in a moment. But he says his goal is to be the champion, and then he kind of tells his Pam about the curse. He's like, you don't know about the curse? You don't know about our family history? Like everyone kind of knows about us. We're popular. And she's like, no, what are you talking about? He goes, well, my dad changed his name to our family name that had a lot of tragedy, and then obviously Jack Jr. was born, and then he passed away when I was very, very young. And then everyone said since then the name is cursed, that there's something wrong with the name because you changed your name and you lost your son. And that sets up that scene. Do you know anything about the Missouri before I move on?
I believe the Missouri thing, they may have tried doing a heel run up there, but that may be like kind of an in joke where St. Louis, Missouri was the seat of power for the NWA. And a lot of one of the subplots of the movie is that Fritz von Erich is always fighting with the rest of the NWA to get that world heavyweight title because they're not acting in the movie like wrestling is a legitimate contest where two people are trying to beat one another. It's like Fritz, when he's trying to get one of his sons to be the champion, he's like, can I make the right political machinations to get everybody to approve one of my boys to be the NWA world champion? Because this is literally how it used to go down. There was an NWA board, and Fritz was on that board. And I did check it out. From 75 to 76, he was the president of the NWA. But usually the main power broker, no matter who the president was Sam Mushnick. And Sam Mushnick was usually the president, but he was getting a little older at this point. Yeah. So basically, the NWA would have a convention every year. Usually it was in Vegas. And when they would go to the NWA convention, the board of directors, usually 9 people. And Vince Sr. even had a seat on that board for a long time, even though he wasn't in the NWA. That's how much people respected Vince McMahon Sr. The 9 people that were in the NWA board of directors would go to that convention and they would vote like who was going to be our world champion. Are we going to change the title at all in this next year? And it went down at that convention. So a lot of those machinations happened at those yearly NWA conventions.
Interesting. So yeah, then our next one is going to be, Kevin, even though David's blown up, this is Kevin's opportunity. He's going to get a crack. He's going to get a chance at Harley Race in a non-title match to kind of find out, to kind of prove himself. So he, probably his dad went to those board meetings. He says, give my boy a chance. He's killing it. And they're like, we'll give you a chance. We'll give you a non-title fight. If your kid can get over, if your kid looks like he can do the deal, we'll roll with your kid. But this is his opportunity. And that's kind of how this is kind of set up here a little bit. the match was fine. There's a moment or two where he might have taken a harder bump and took a little bit to get back in the ring, whether that's kayfabe or real, who knows? Because the movie does do a good job of protecting kayfabe a little bit, but also kind of keeping kayfabe, pulling the curtain back a little bit. And it's kind of cool as a wrestling fan, even as a smart mark, you see the movie a little differently than someone who would know the wrestling business. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which I like that. I kind of like how there's a little bit of there's still some magic in a pro wrestling movie about pro wrestling,
Yeah.
Which I really like. But, he's going to get this opportunity. The dad always wanted it. This is the dad's goal. I can taste it. I'm getting it through you. Like, dad's hungry for this. And it's the family mission. So Harley Race, and I love how the movie does this. It does it twice in the movie. But Harley Race gets on the screen, and he's cutting a promo. And he's cutting a promo for this big match that we're about to see in the movie. And so I'll kind of stop it here for a second, BP. From a scale of 1 to 10, how good did they cast Harley Race?
Certainly better than another casting decision that has been widely discussed. I think I thought the guy who played Harley did a pretty good job.
Arm tattoo.
No, the arm tattoo was missing. Yeah, that was there's definitely a 1.5 to 2 points off just for the no arm tattoo. But I think he did get over this, like that I'm like this is a serious man. Like that he was a little more gruff than Kevin. He was a little more like. Kevin is more out of like what the 1980s version of a professional wrestler, but Harley Race is like this serious man.
Do you think he captured Harley in the promo though? Do you think he captured Harley's essence?
To a degree.
Yeah. I would agree. But I'll tell you what, I don't know if they re-recited an old promo that happened, or if they had someone write him a promo for the movie. I can't tell you if those promos were 100% accurate that we get in this movie.
But whoever wrote about that with the other one, but yeah, I'm not sure about the Harley one. It probably was an amalgamation.
Yeah, this was a good promo. I think whoever wrote this promo was a good promo. I thought it set the tone for what we were about to see, and I enjoyed this aspect of the movie of the promo before and holding the belt, like, holding it out around the waist, but like almost like a baby. But yeah, so the match goes on. It's a good match. It's a beat and bang 'em up match. But unfortunately, he's going to win this one by DQ. Harley Race will get himself disqualified. And then, he starts beating down his brother he's beating down Kevin after the match. David makes a run in, chases off Harley Race and gets a microphone and he starts talking and his cadence isn't there. He's struggling and Dave just in the moment he's hyped up.
Kevin starts cutting the promo.
Yeah, Kevin's cutting the promo and it's not good. And I don't think David, they didn't, at least it wasn't seen this way, but David didn't grab it to steal the mic. He did it because he's like, oh, my brother's struggling. He's exhausted. He's probably hurt. I'll save him. I'll help him here. And he gets the mic and he cuts a promo. Man, it's a good promo. And everyone's kind of hyped up about the promo. And the match happened and it was a good match. But the promo at the end of the match really hit the lights for people when it came to David. Like, oh, even though he just cut a promo saying my brother's going to beat you down, everyone's like, wait a second, that was some good talking.
Mm-hmm.
We want to see that talking versus each other. That would be a promo like that. That's the selling to it. That's the talking versus talking, match versus match. Sorry, Kevin.
Into the seats, yeah.
We need David. We need David now. And that's kind of said backstage, that they go back and he's like, what the hell was that during the match? You kind of made yourself look weak. You didn't answer the bell fast enough. You made yourself kind of look kind of like, and that's where like in the match, they don't know how the kayfabe's there. And the dad even says like, and he go, oh, I took a real bad bump, Dad. But realistically, he's probably like, what we're saying is probably what happened backstage. Like, what are you taking a 9 count for? Like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
You're supposed to be looking tough. Like,
but and there's even more subtext there of, Harley was testing you. And this is a thing that happens to this day. If somebody's going to get that spot, that especially like if they're going to get that spot and somebody's going to see if they're ready for it, they're going to test them. They're going to put them through the paces. So Kevin complains like, I've never taken a landing that hard. It's like, well, Harley's testing you. Like Harley's seeing if you're cut out for this. Are you ready to be the man? Yeah. And you can see in Fritz's mind that this is setting that Fritz's standards for his kids are just so impossibly high.
Yeah.
That
when you're on top, you're still not on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the biggest thing. Even if you're on top, Kevin, you will never be on top. Everyone's always better than Kevin, even though you're my physically oldest still breathing, but yeah, so Dave kind of moves into the top spot here, and is publicly and with the family. You know, the dad said at the breakfast table that position
That
can
order
change
can
in a
change.
heartbeat.
Yep.
Yeah. So this kind of shows now cutting to Kerry, and Kerry's, you know, training for the Olympic Games. He's working hard. He's pumped. He's ready to go. He looks amazing. He's rocking and rolling. You know, Texas. I loved Kerry. Was my favorite. The hair, the bandana. This guy is where it's at. Like, I like him a lot. But as this is going down, the family's sitting around the newscast, and there's a announcement. You know, some stuff going on in the Middle East, and Russia's involved in some nasty stuff, and the games will be held in Moscow this year, and the Cold War is going on, and the U.S. will not send its athletes to Moscow to compete in the Summer Games.
Yep.
They're not doing it. So
and this really happened. Yeah, this is real life.
So Kevin has to come home. He comes home. The Olympics have been taken away from him. Kerry is home, because the way the timing is with the Olympics is, you know, you're in that cycle, and when the next cycle comes around, the chances of you being in there again after 4 to 8 years is very unlikely, because they find the next top people.
But for the people that did make it, they were really lucking out, because the 1980 Olympics, the U.S. boycotts because they're in Moscow. 84 comes around, the Olympics are in Los Angeles, and the USSR backs out. Yeah. So it came full circle.
Yeah. So now Kerry's home, you know, and things are going. Kerry's back home. The dad's proud. He's, you know, playing football in the yard. Kerry's the best. You guys are all trash compared to him. Yeah. Like, once again, trying to get the fellas to hate each other. Yeah. So they're all around the picnic table. They're having a thing. And this is where you learn the dad was a musician. He loved it. And he goes, listen, music was fun, but I chose sports and it checked out. And this is what this family's about. We're a sports family. How dare you? And what then Mike kind of sticks up. He goes, I have an orchestra concert today. I'm going to get paid for it. I want to go. Yeah. And they're like, no chance. You're not going to a college campus. You're too young. And he's like, this guy went around the world at 17. I can't go two towns over. And they're like, no, I won't have any of it. And the brothers are like, we'll take him. It'll be no problem. We'll go with him. We'll be good to go. Like, have each other's back. And the mother says no. I said no. The father says no. And Mike's dreams look like they're crushed here. And this scene is awesome, because this scene really shows how strong these brothers are and how much they'll do anything for each other. Yep. David jumps out of a window. They all get in the truck. They throw it in neutral. Even Pam's involved with this, which is kind of cool. Pam's like one of the boys here. Like
yeah.
She's helping the boy. Like, she really seems like she bonded with the mom. Always kind of, this entire movie looked like she never liked Pam. But the dad really liked Pam. The brothers got Pam. She was one of the boys. Like, she was always there. I don't know how true that is when it goes to the movie, but that's what the movie portrays here. And they push the truck in neutral far enough away from the house that they could turn the engine on and get there. They go, they party, they have a great time. It shows maybe Kerry's partying is crazy.
Oh yeah. Well, they were all partiers. Yeah. All the Von Erich boys were partiers.
Yeah. So then after the partying and everything, it kind of shows the dad sitting at home, and he's sitting in his office counting his money, and he's watching the TV, and Ric Flair just wins the NWA title. So that essentially takes the rematch after the DQ off the table for the Von Erich family. Once again, Ric Flair is the man in the NWA, and the dad is livid. He's pissed. He's like, listen.
Well, this would have been... With this time frame, this would have been Ric Flair's first title win in 1981, I believe.
Okay.
Again, the timing of this and the timing of real life is off. Like, and we'll get into some more glaring examples of this. But yeah, this would have been. I think this is supposed to be Ric Flair's first title win in 1981.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's pissed. He's outside chopping wood the next day. He's grinding. He's like, listen, this guy, like, I want this fucking title. Like, and he looks over and he's like, there's that kid, you know, there's my top guy, Olympic star, famous. This guy, I'm gonna go talk to him. I think it's time for you to get into business, son. And he's like, absolutely, Dad, I got you. So he's training now. Kerry is in the mix. He's in the training. And this is a cool scene where I really like it, because Kerry's in the garage and he's working out. And Mike's in the other room because he's the classic rock guy. He loves his music, and he turns on Tom Sawyer by Rush. He turns it up.
Which This is a very big clue in. First of all, again, just to and I'm not trying to pick the movie apart for inaccuracies. Again, it's not trying to be a factual account of the way things happen. Because those Olympics that were boycotted were in 1980. Kerry Von Erich had his first match in 1978. So he was already a wrestler at this point.
Oh,
not a full-time wrestler because he was going to college. He was at the University of Houston. But like they would have little like.
So he went into the Olympics already trained as a wrestler. So
yeah,
he didn't just take to a duck to a water because he was an athlete.
Right. No. He was already he started wrestling at 18. And by 1980, when the Olympics boycott would happen, he was 20 years old. I believe he did do discus at the University of Houston, but probably like when he was off college, he was back wrestling like over the summer. Hey, we need you for a program. And he really didn't take off until a little bit later. But yeah, he was definitely
he was trained, ready to go.
Well known to the Dallas wrestling faithful before he came back because he wasn't able to go to the Olympics.
Yeah, but Tom Sawyer's playing, and it kind of shows that like I like this song.
No, Kerry Von Erich, his nickname was the Modern Day Warrior, which comes right. That was Kerry's music. One of the things, and they do touch on this with like camera angles, and Fritz is like, I don't care about camera angles, but World Class does have a reputation for really revolutionizing presentation for wrestling, which you wouldn't think of. You would think Fritz Von Erich is going to be this very old school, very stodgy type of production, but they were really on the cutting edge of having multiple camera angles for a TV show, for implementing music that was popular during the day. They had the Freebirds. The Freebirds didn't invent entrance music, but the Freebirds made entrance music a thing. The Freebirds, who have a very small part in this movie, are really one of the people that started that whole rock and wrestling thing that the WWF took and just went to the moon with.
Yeah.
But if you go to like the early 1980s, like we watched WrestleMania 1 not that long ago. It wasn't until Dick Ebersol started getting involved in like 86 that WWF's production really jumped up to that level. But World Class was really at it as far as a presentation level in like 82, 83. And 1982, 83, that is when they're really at their peak, because you have the three brothers who really were the ideal three brothers, which were Kevin David and Kerry, of course. Yeah. And you had them against the Freebirds. And one of the matches they don't really touch on here, which was a very famous match, one of the most famous singles matches in World Class, was a cage match between Ric Flair as the NWA World Champion and Kerry Von Erich in 1982. And it's like, who's going to be the guest referee? And Michael Hayes winds up being the guest referee. And it's basically, well, even though the Freebirds are enemies, we're going to bring the title back to Texas, and Hayes screws them.
Yeah.
And that just ignites the Freebirds feud.
Yeah. So also this happened. So that already happens before, because we'll get into where maybe this is way accurate in that movie. This is the rise of Kerry as a professional wrestler. So you're saying there's already a whole other things going on here, but this part of the movie, it shows the Von Erichs and the Freebirds really developing this 6-man tag rivalry. Then they go on to win the 6-man titles, but they show them in all these different venues. And some of the shots they shoot these wrestling rings, even with no ring aprons and skirts, it's just, the shots are amazing. The way they show, like, they really capture the essence of professional wrestling, of just different venues and how they can look and how they're presented. But the 6-man title is a huge thing. This rivalry is just good money for the Freebirds. It's good money for the Von Erichs. They're rivaling all over the place.
Gigantic business.
And it's really blowing up the WCCW, like giving them everything they want. And they end up going on to win the NWA 6-man titles in a championship in 1983. And like I said, they go on to win that. And one of the things I definitely want to say is Gordy in the movie is played by Silas Mason, I believe he goes by. Yeah, Silas Mason. I actually got to work with him. I went to a GCW show way back in the day, and he was there for the GCW the Settlement Series show at H2O. And he was there that day, and I was like, he was wearing cut-off Daisy Duke shorts. He had the huge mullet, like crop top hoodie. I was like, I remember I was in our group chat, like, this is my new favorite independent wrestler. Like, he's such a goofball. I think he's so good. And I'm still, to this day, a big fan of this guy. And
then
it was cool.
Ryan Nemeth, Nick Nemeth's brother, was Gino Hernandez. He already had his spot in the film, but he was one of the wrestlers as well.
Yeah, I was going to say if anyone else, but I wanted to give that a shout out because I am a fan of Silas. He actually is in the NWA currently wrestling. So if you want to go and see a current wrestler who was in this movie, he plays Gordy in this. Very, very good.
You want to talk about somebody who was good super quick? Terry Gordy. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, Terry Gordy was good.
Yeah, so the dad gets in the ring and cuts a promo after they win the 6-man title and essentially calls out the NWA on national television and kind of says, we're here. We're better than everybody else. Stop playing games. Bring the NWA title here so my boy Kerry here or David here can win it. And David's going to beat whoever you have. Bring him down here. We're going to get this taken care of. And, and now it shows the brothers are like, all right, the opportunities for the families coming. We don't know who can go for the title, but we'll see. It's essentially who the NWA picks. It kind of shows their substance issues, shows them on the gas. They're all juicing up. There's a lot of craziness happen here. And we end up finding out that David versus Flair is on the docket. David's getting Rick. They're gonna travel on a 6-month tour around the country, and David's gonna go after Rick the whole time. They're gonna start that chase. They're gonna start that excitement. Then he's gonna go to Japan for a little bit, and if he can get over in Japan, he will get Rick in May. So they have a timeline. The title fight's happening in May, but your test now, David, from now till May is get over in America, get over here during the 6-month tour. Go to Japan. Now, they don't really put into this, but you can kind of see throughout the tempo of the movie, the dad is on it. Like, the dad tastes it. This is what he wants. So I'm sure the excess pressure that these boys went through at this time to not only help each other, because he even says to his thing, he goes, listen, your brother's getting it. But he got it because he used to as well. Like, and you can see, like, they're all happy for their brother, but Kevin's like, man, I just fell.
Yeah.
Like, the typical wrestling. Like, I work so hard, but just you slide down the ladder a little bit, you know.
And if you know the story, as soon as they say Japan, your heart is just like, oh no, here we go.
Yeah,
here we go.
If you know the story, you know the story. It kind of shows Kevin's getting married. Him and Pam are getting married. They're having a blast. They're there, and Kevin finds David in the bathroom, and he's puking up blood. And he's like, "What's going on?" He goes, "I caught a bug. I'll be fine. I'll be good to go." And he's like, I don't think you should go to Japan, man. I think you should rest. He goes, not go to Japan? Are you crazy? You know what Dad will say to me if I don't go to Japan? Like, they don't say all this, but you kind of know that. Like, I have to go. Like, there's no wrestling is how our family is fed. This is like everything about this business is what we need to do to be successful. And they don't really like. This is part of the movie where I feel like a non-wrestling fan or even current day wrestling fans or performers need to realize how much different the business is, right?
Yeah.
You have the terminology that's thrown out there, and I'm sure, you know, there's heat here, but I'm sure somebody, if they listen to this, will appreciate this. The term cosplaying wrestling. Like, these younger kids are just cosplay wrestling. And what they mean by that is this isn't putting food on their table. They're going to shows every weekend, and they're doing it because they want to be what they think a professional wrestler is.
It's not their livelihood.
But yes, this is a time where it's like the traveling carny. You need to make your money. Mm-hmm. Like, money is a big deal. And the wrestling business is much different at this point in time than it is in these current day times where more people are having fun in wrestling, but you didn't have fun in wrestling back then. It was, sure, you partied in between sets.
Oh yeah.
But you worked, and you had to keep an image and to keep a thing, and it was serious business, but you also had to protect the business. So there's a lot more layers to what professional wrestling is now in the time frame of this movie than what it is today.
Also, another time jump here, because if David's not feeling well, this is probably early 1984 where we're supposed to be, and Kevin and Pam get married in 1980. So they were married 4 years before, at least 3 years before this really happens.
So they said, listen, so, you know, he goes to Japan. He comes over to see his dad, and he goes, your brother's dead. He had a ruptured intestine and died in his hotel room in Japan. And but we still got to put this match on. Let's figure it out. Get your shit together. They go to the funeral. They show the funeral's massive. The people, the crowd, it was a big deal in Texas of David passing away. And coin flip happens, and it looks like Kerry won the flip. Kerry wins the flip here, and he's going to get the world title shot against Ric Flair in this scene. But before that, the mom's watching it at home, and crazy cool little scene here. But you kind of look in the background at the top of the stairs while she's watching the match, and David's there. David, the spirit, like the apparition of David. And it's not like, oh, there was spooky ghosts or anything like that, but it kind of shows that, like, he was watching. And the mom kind of feels that he was there that day watching his brother on TV at the house. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And Kerry wins the title. They don't really they don't really talk about, him wrestling Flair at this point in time for the title, but he gets his opportunity. And they because I think they're saving the Flair stuff for later on in the movie, so they kind of glaze over it here. But he wins the title, partying. He's into his thing. He goes out. He's making money as the champion. They're doing really well, and he decides, I'm going to leave the title here. I'm going to go for a quick ride on my motorcycle.
See, when I watched it, I construed this, and this is another like kind of time jump thing. So a few things here. I highly doubt it was a coin flip. I don't think it was Fritz.
I don't think it was either.
And at this point, Kerry had pretty clearly surpassed Kevin in favor and as a draw and things like that. Not a slight against Kevin, but Kerry was seen as a superstar. Like, he was seen as a guy where the rumor was always that if Vince knew he couldn't get Kerry to leave his dad, or he would have had him play the Hulk Hogan role. Like, that was the perception of, like, Kerry Von Erich at this time. And really, the title win, like they don't really talk about this. I think they may call it the Parade of Champions, but the title win that Kerry gets here is at an event at Texas Stadium where the Dallas Cowboys played, called it was called the first annual David Von Erich Parade of Champions. So it was literally like supposed to be a match. It was May 6, 1984. It was about 40 years ago. A little over 40 years ago now. So a few months after David passes away, and the whole thing is they pack the house, 45,000 plus fans.
He came with David's jacket.
Yeah, there was even a song that they said they put out just for it. Heaven Needed a Champion. And so, and if you want to see like the kind of carny Fritz really was, apparently they were selling autographs. They said David signed before he passed away, and really they had one of the referees sign them. Yeah, that's kind of carny Fritz was. Signing fake autographs of his dead son, like, who died 2 months ago. Yep. So
he didn't like the dad after this movie. That ain't gonna help.
No. So the way I felt that the way I understood the movie to go was it seemed to me like they made it seem like Kerry won the title, and that night went out for that motorcycle ride.
Yeah.
But that motorcycle ride happened over 2 years later. Yeah. And Kerry because Kerry like defended the title. Kerry, not for long, but Kerry was the champion for, I believe, like 2.5 weeks. Because it was always the understanding you're going to win this. It's a tribute show to David. We're gonna have this big moment in Dallas, and then like Kerry lost in Japan like not that long later. It was by the end of that month, Kerry was Ric Flair had the title back.
Yeah. Stephen Chambers says David Manning might have been the referee signing those autographs.
And they don't really jump into it this much here, but at this point, the war is now against Vince, and the power in the NWA definitely by 85, but even by 84 is really consolidated in Jim Crockett Promotions, to the point where in the mid 80s, Fritz leaves the NWA. Like, World Class isn't even a part of the NWA anymore, and they actually get affiliated with the AWA.
Yeah.
But that's not really covered in the movie.
Yeah. So well, it kind of jumps right from the hurt leg into, Mike's training. Mike's in the ring. Mike's wrestling. It's time for him to step up and be the next.
Well, I think
David.
we're missing something very big here.
What's that?
Not only does the scene with the crutches, where Kerry's like, you just see him riding on a motorcycle, and you see him like getting out of bed, and he's walking on crutches, and then he's missing
his from the shin down,
most
of his ankle.
Yeah. So this is a real thing, kind of. Kerry did not immediately lose his leg in the motorcycle accident that actually happened in 1986, but they say like they did reconstructive surgery on his foot, and then he tried to walk on it too soon, and damaged his foot to the point where they did have to amputate. And so
Yeah.
for the last 6.5 years of his life, Kerry did wrestle on basically 1 foot.
1 foot, yeah. So Mike's training at this point while Kerry's dealing with his missing most of his foot, or through about a quarter of his leg here at the bottom, from the ankle up to like mid shin, is what they're showing in the movie. But yeah, David's wrestling. He's in a match. He's in a tag team match. It doesn't really say who or what, but he goes for a drop kick. Then he comes for another drop kick, and on the third drop kick, he lands on his shoulder weird and hurts his shoulder, and they have to call the match, and he's bummed out now. He also, was it more Mike or was it more the youngest brother that had the injury bug?
This is where they kind of married the two together. David did get injured, but the injury prone thing was Chris,
the youngest brother.
So yeah. David, they did kind of put a lot of Chris in the David. David really wasn't as in the wrestling as his older brothers were. He was more of an artistic musician type guy. They said he wanted to be a cameraman. Like, he really wanted to be a cameraman for World Class. He was really more into that production side of things.
Yeah.
But he kind of got forced in the whole wrestling thing.
Chris was like, I want to be this, but I'm also
Chris was very small. Chris was the youngest. He was probably a full foot shorter than David. And he, no matter what he did, he wasn't going to be he wasn't even as built as Kevin, let alone Kerry. So Chris was like kind of the runt of the litter. And I think he had some health issues, and I believe he was using prednisone as a child that made his bones a little brittle. Yeah. So yeah, Chris had,
and mentally he wanted it probably just as much as the dad did.
Yeah, Chris really wanted to do it. He just didn't have the physical gifts of his older brother,
and he pushed himself to the point where he hurt himself a lot.
Yeah, where Mike had a decent size, but wrestling wasn't for him. Yeah. Not that he didn't have heart, but he
didn't have a heart for the business. Yeah, his heart wasn't to be a professional wrestler. So during this, he goes for a surgery, and during the surgery, he gets toxic shock syndrome, and he goes into a coma, and he comes out, and he's not 100% anymore. He has a hard time speaking. He's fragile, and immediately Dad puts him in front of a camera with his brothers and talking about this comeback and kind of really cashing in. And I remember even going back and rewatching the videos, like Dark Side of the Ring does a good job showing this, but like, man, like you could tell that at this point, Mike is like, just leave me alone. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be a part of this. Like, I look weak. I look dumb. I can't speak. It looks like I'm kind of like, it was not a good look to put him on camera. And it really seemed like the dad was really trying to cash in on the tragedy of maybe And then like Kerry and Kevin did say later, like he felt the pressure to be David, and he did lose a lot of weight when he had the complications of surgery, when he had that toxic shock syndrome. They made it look like it was in Dallas, and it was actually before Kerry's injury. So they made it look like, oh, Kerry's hurt, so let's have David or Mike start wrestling. Yeah. But no, it's because basically like, well, we lost David, Mike, you're David now, but he was never David. Yeah. And he did have some other things going on, so he did get brain damage from the complications from the surgery. He basically had a 107-degree fever for like 2 hours, but it was actually in Israel. It wasn't in Texas. He was sick in Israel. They actually had a lot of TV in Israel. They had a huge tour in Israel. They don't really talk about this in the movie, even to the point where I know one time, I believe it was Chris Adams, like really messed the guy up, and they had to get him out of the country. He would have been like in Israeli prison forever. Yeah. And then Mike also had a car accident, which gave him even worse head injuries in 1986. And he was just so frustrated. And this leads to what you're probably going to go to next. Yeah. And in the movie, it looks like he's struggling. He's popping pills. He's drinking. He's struggling. He's having a bad time. All the while, they're kind of showing Kerry is kind of training on the one leg, trying to get back into it, and he's struggling. So it's really showing the brothers are really not in a good spot here. And then unfortunately, the way the scene kind of plays out is they're in the yard at night and they're trying to train and get each other good, but you kind of see in the background a flashlight walking through the woods. David, and it's Mike.
Mike.
Mike's walking through the woods, and he leaves a suicide note, and he's like, "Listen, I'm going to go to a better place. I don't want to be here anymore." And unfortunately, he goes in those woods and he takes his life.
Yeah, he took alcohol and sleeping pills, and he was dealing with some other stuff too. He'd been arrested for a DUI right before that, and There's another scene in here. So this is that one of the blink if you miss it cameos, and I think it was originally supposed to be a larger role. But there's a scene where like Kevin is just kind of lethargically standing on an apron while a guy in red trunks is wrestling with him. And this is it's a very brief scene. It's maybe 15, 20 seconds. And that guy in the red trunks is supposed to be Lance Von Erich, who is played by MJF in the movie. Mm-hmm. And Lance was not a real member of the family. Lance was I forget his real last name, but Lance was a guy they found at a gym. And they thought I think he was originally South African. And so he was brought in as Waldo, Fritz's kayfabe brother from way back when. Lance was brought in as Waldo's son, the cousin of the Von Erichs. And it was because it was just basically Kevin, Lance, and then when Kerry came back, Kerry, or for a while maybe even been Kerry, Kevin, Lance, and Chris, because Kerry's rehabbing from his injury.
Well, do you also think here, this is where, Kevin is like, man, like, I have the ability and the look to be the guy again. Like, why do they all, like, it's almost like, well, we tried with him and it didn't work, but his brothers were good and they were more personality. Maybe we got to put someone with him. Well, it'll bring out the better side. Like, we'll still be able to, yeah.
Yeah, at this point, the NWA thing is kind of not happening. They're out of the NWA. Yeah. And Kerry's really, if anybody's going to be like a world champion, it's going to be Kerry at this point, even though Kerry is hurt. And if you go back to like the 80s, 86 and all that, yeah, Lance Vaughn, that's his real name, Lance Vaughn. So if you go back to the 80s, like Kevin is for a while the world-class champion, but that's kind of the ceiling for Kevin at this point. The AWA is kind of bouncing around between Rick Martel and Bockwinkel for a little bit, Kurt Hennig. The NWA, it's just Jim Crockett Promotions now. They have a stranglehold on its Flair. They're the world class is out of it. World class is like struggling to survive by 86, 87. Like to the point again, here's another peering into the mind of Fritz Von Erich. They do a whole thing where Fritz fakes a heart attack. Just to kind of get publicity because their crowds are dwindling.
Yeah. Well, here in the match, here in the movie, we're going to see that, the training, and then obviously he takes his own life. And one of the toughest scenes in the movie, and I'm going to be honest, this one, there was a few times where I fought back emotion watching this, but this one, like tears get in my eyes when the mom is just staring at that black dress. She's like, I wore this 3 times now, and all 3 of them are my children. Like, I can't wear it. I can't physically put that dress on again. Like the dress is bad memories. Like the mom is trying so hard to be a good wife and be there for her husband who is probably really hard to deal with.
Yep.
And the mom is just trying to hold it together, but she's mentally checked out. She's just like, I'm just kind of going through motions. Like a mother losing 1 kid is already hard. She's on 3 now. Yeah. And 2, 1 was taken, both of them were taken by tragedy, accidents. And the third now was a suicide, which is not easy to deal with.
It's not a big role, but Maura Tierney does a great job with that role too. She is, she was. I think the most famous movie she was probably in was Liar Liar with Jim Carrey. She played Jim Carrey's wife. She was on a TV show way back when, News Radio, but she does a great job.
Yeah, it was tough. That was a tough scene for me, but Kevin keeps training, and in March. He's going to get an opportunity to go against Ric Flair. Now, this is where Ric Flair does his promo before the match, and this is where they really jazz up Ric Flair for you as a character. The promo, awesome promo. Great promo. Don't know how much of the promo was actually used or how much was movied, but him saying like, oh, you lost your brother? Boo-hoo. A real man picks it up. A real man. And that's kind of where they do a lot of this movie is just like bury your emotions. Keep it moving. Mm-hmm. You're in the wrestling business, kid. No one's going to cry for you. You know what I mean? Like the Flair promo kind of said like, I'm the man and this is why. You don't think I went through tragedy? You don't think I went through hard time? You know what I mean? Like it was, the Flair promo was good, but the guy playing Flair, he did not capture the essence of Ric Flair.
Not really capture the essence of Ric Flair for all the effort. Did not. And some of that stuff in those promos was composite stuff from, it's actually 2 different promos that were on the original Ric Flair collection DVD. The one about like this suit costs, whatever, your suit costs that much, and I don't know how much that costs, to be ashamed to wear it. That was from like one of the Ric Flair promos on the Ultimate Ric Flair collection DVD. And then the other one is like, I think what you're talking about, like if you're a man, you don't cry about it, you take life, the ups and downs. If you're a real man, you stay up, you don't go down. that is like from a promo he did just for Mid Atlantic, for NWA.
Yeah.
Like that is just ripped from an actual promo Ric Flair did that had nothing to do with the Von Erichs.
Yeah. Well, it makes it look like Ric Flair is essentially insensitive to the tragedy of the Von Erichs and Kevin, which then will lead into the match where Kevin goes crazy and he puts the Iron Claw on, and Flair grabs a hold of the rope and he won't let go. He pushes the ref away, and he's going to get another opportunity at the World Championship, but unfortunately he's going to lose this one to DQ. And Flair goes, man, I'll wrestle you any day of the week. That was fantastic. Yeah. You are a great wrestler. I will wrestle you up and down this coast because you will make me money. But unfortunately, that's the limit. You're going to be the guy who wrestles really good, but you're never going to be Ric Flair. Mm-hmm. And Flair kind of like, let's go get a beer. He goes, I'm good. I don't think that. And he's just like, all right, see you later, baby, and leaves. But like, really, just shows the hard work and care. Like, Kevin just works super hard, but he's just he's hit his glass ceiling.
It's also shown the growth of Kevin of, okay, maybe wrestling is not the most important thing in my life anymore.
Yeah. And
maybe my family is a little more important than wrestling now.
Yeah. And that's kind of where he switches, because he takes over the business now here. He's in charge of the promotion. The dad has retired, and he kind of looks through the books and he's like, man, all these books are cooked. He cooked all these books. It's all bullshit. How did he, where did he get the money to keep this going? Because I can't. You know, me and my wife are outgrowing our apartment. We're struggling. Everything's bad. And he kind of goes to his dad and he says, listen, man, you know, Kerry goes to Kerry's in WWF now. They're watching him wrestle Mr. Perfect.
Yeah, so now we're timed up in 1990. Yeah.
Yeah. We're watching him wrestle, you know, and he kind of says to his dad, you know, Jared made me an offer. And he goes, if you sell that company, you know, who do you think? Oh, you're this is where the problem with you. You never take response. Kind of like blaming him for. And he's like, Dad, you ruined the business. I came into a shit show. And he's like, oh, you're going to blame me? You're going to blame me because you couldn't get the job done? Because you need your brothers again? Kind of like being a dick to him. And he goes, if you sell that business and you sell that company, don't ever walk through that door again. And everything about this guy has been this family and doing everything for his family. Like, it's hard to hear your dad say that. And he kind of keeps he kind of keeps it going. And at this point in time, Kerry's back home for Christmas. He's like, I'm not going to stay long. And he kind of gives his dad a gift of a pistol. And, you know, and then it kind of cuts to a scene in a hotel room at night where Kerry calls Kevin. And he's like, I'm not good, man. I'm struggling. I'm hurting. I have nobody. I don't have, like, you know, WWE's not going to resign me. Like, they're going to let me go. I'm going to lose my job. I don't know what to do. I'm struggling. Mentally, I'm not good. Like, he's probably struggling with substance abuse and everything like that. And he goes, don't worry, man. Like, head home. I'll be there as soon as I can. And I don't know how the timeline of this, but
it's way off. The timeline of this is just way off.
He goes to the house and he pulls up and the car doors open, which, you know, not a great sign if someone just leaves their car door wide open. The front door of the house is wide open. And as he's going to walk in the house, he hears the pop. And he looks over, and his brother is now laying on the ground. Self-inflicted gunshot wound to the chest. He shot himself in the chest. And Kerry Von Erich, unfortunately, has taken his life. Do you want to kind of give us a little bit timeline here?
Yeah, so this is these are some kind of wild time jumps here. So the funny thing is, Kevin never really ran the company. They kind of make it like that. They even have it where, like, he can't go home. Like, there's this whole subplot where he just can't go home. He can't face his family. He's literally sleeping in the office at the Sportatorium. Yeah, and I think it's even at Mike's funeral. He's like, Pam's like, when are you coming home? You need to come home. And he just can't do it. And eventually he finally does. It's like that symbolic breaking of, you know, wrestling having this control over his life. But it's really, by the time Kerry's in the WWF in 1990, they had sold to Jerry Jarrett 2 years prior. And even before that, the World Class was really, it stayed alive for a little bit as Kevin and Kerry were really hot. But by the time Kerry has that motorcycle accident, it's tough. And it's not just because David died and Kerry's hurt and Mike dies too, but wrestling's changing. The territory system is dying out. The WWF is taking over and everybody else is just fighting for their lives. And the World Class was just a casualty of that. Even people that weren't Von Erichs, they lost Rick Rude. Rick Rude goes to Crockett, then he goes to WWF. The Dingo Warrior goes to the WWF and becomes the Ultimate Warrior. So they just had some, like, more of their local guys, and they try to make it work with the AWA, but the AWA is dying too.
The territories are all just getting killed. Yeah, because WWE is killing it.
Memphis hangs on more than any of them, but even Memphis finally loses out, like in the 90s. So the first person who was brought in, who was booking a little bit and was working backstage. He had started as a wrestler, but he had kind of just become a backstage guy and an office guy in World Class as a guy, Ken Mantell. And Ken Mantell winds up buying part of World Class from Fritz. And then they sell to Jerry Jarrett in 1988. The other thing that's not really talked about, this hit Bill Watts worse than Fritz is, but the economy in Dallas in the mid to late 80s is going bad because there's an oil recession. Oil prices plummet in the mid 1980s, and that hurts World Class really bad. That hurts Mid-South really bad, and that changes the economics of people just don't have the money to go to wrestling because they lost their jobs because the oil fields are shutting down. And that's a huge thing in Texas. That's a huge thing in Dallas. So in fact, Kevin was one of the people who was kind of resistant to Jerry Jarrett taking over World Class. And maybe there's rumors that he even filed a lawsuit about it, but that's kind of unsubstantiated. But by the time Kerry's in WWF as the Intercontinental Champion, it's kind of done, and World Class is kind of done. And then Kerry passes away in 1993. And he's the last of the Von Erich brothers that did pass away, and he was
the other brother in between this time. So
yes,
Mike takes his life, and then Chris takes his life.
Yeah,
and then Kerry takes his life.
Yeah, Mike passed in 1987. And then Chris passed in 1991. So I think Kerry was already gone as the Texas Tornado at this point. But yeah, it was, again, just drug issues, depression, injuries, because he was just even simple wrestling moves. Chris was he was an asthmatic. He was just like not an athlete. He wasn't his brothers as much as he wanted to be. So yeah, he and unfortunately Chris passed away in 1991, and Kerry would have been in 1993. And much like Mike, Kerry, another issue that was going on with Kerry, I believe he was going through a divorce at the time. That was a big thing. And then I'm not 100% on that, but I believe he was. And then
who's that?
Kerry.
Oh,
and
Kerry.
Then he was also about to face some significant legal issues. He was on probation. He was arrested again for drug related stuff. And apparently Bret Hart had said, even as far back as 1990, that Kerry had decided he was going to join his brothers in heaven. He's just waiting on God to tell him when. Yeah. And that was it was just.
And it kind of this was not in the movie, but it was talked about in the Dark Side of the Ring. The second brother to take his own life and was a gunshot wound as well.
The
first
Chris.
brother was sleeping pills, and the Chris was a gunshot wound. I believe he shot himself in the head. But it was one of those situations where he went down to like the lake that they had on the property, and he was in a bad way, and he was crying, and he didn't want to be alive anymore. And Kevin kind of feels like he talked him out of it. And he said he turned to like walk back up the path because he just give me a little bit of time. I just want to sit here by myself. Thank you. I'm clear headed. And when he turned and he started walking the path, he heard the gunshot. So unfortunately, this is now we're now here at Kerry is dead on the front yard, and now it's a second brother that he pretty much just missed. Yeah. And they both kind of came to him for help. And it's he says it to his brother on the phone too. He goes, after everything that I went through, you're gonna call and tell me you're gonna do this to yourself, man. Like, let me get there and talk to you. Like, please, you're gonna like. He's essentially telling, like, for my own sanity, please don't do this, man. Yeah. Like, because you don't. And this is where, like, if you knew the story with Chris has already done this to him. Chris was like, hey man, I'm gonna do this, and then he kind of feels like he win, and I saved my brother. I talked to him. And then he does it anyway, and it's like within a couple steps of each other. So like he was there for it. He was fresh for it. Like Chris was still like in his death rattle while Kevin's holding him. You know what I mean? Like this this guy went through it. You know what I mean? And there's a really crazy scene here. He kind of he goes after his dad. He's like, I just told you to look out for him, talk to him, be there, be a fucking father. Like fucking get yourself in a check and just talk to your fucking kid. Like, he's choking him. Like, he looks like he's gonna kill him. Who knows if that's true or not? But it made a good point to the movie that like he kind of feels like he got that frustration out of it. Instead of swallowing it all the time, he took it out on his dad. He carries him into the scene, into the living room table. Once again, I don't know if any of this is true or if it's just movie gaga, but he carries him in, puts him on the kitchen table, and essentially at this point, like, there's no more brothers left. He's by himself. His last brother is dead in his arms, and it kind of cuts away, and it shows like an afterlife scene where, you know, he's on a boat and he's going and he sees his brothers on the dock, and he even sees the first little kid, you know,
Jack Jr.
Jack Jr. And he's reunited with his brothers, and he kind of says, like how you were saying before, they wrote a song called Champion Heaven, and it's just like he's like, oh, even up here you're the world champ, and like he kind of like lifts up his shirt a little bit. Like, they don't show the belt, but they show like, yeah, I'm a champion up here, baby. You know what I mean? Like, it was, and all the brothers are together and they're reunited in this beautiful afterlife scene. It shows that you know, he sells the company to Jerry, and he's like, hey, your dad tried to intimidate me, and then he goes, I'm glad it didn't work. And then it kind of shows the dad coming home, and he says to the wife, like, what's for dinner? She's like, I don't know, I didn't want to eat. Figure out your own.
Well, yeah, that's something that's not really touched on in the movie. By the time Carrie passes in 1993, Fritz and Doris, or Dottie as they call her in this, had divorced. They divorced in 1992.
Yeah. So
that marriage was breaking apart. And how can you withstand like that much loss?
Yeah, and they can tell like the dad's lost his kids, he lost his wife, the wife lost her husband. Like there was just so much loss here. But you know, and then it shows kind of Kevin at the end of the movie, and he's sitting there with his two boys, and his wife's pregnant.
Daughter's not in the movie. He has two daughters that are not in the movie.
Yeah, but he's sitting there with his two boys, and the one on the way at this point in time in the movie, and he's just crying. Yeah. And he's just like, "What's the matter, Dad?" And he's like, you know, he's kind of showing to his kids that he's crying, like which is like
he's showing that vulnerability Fritz can never show. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and that was kind of the symbolic part of that. Like, he's crying in front of his kids, and his kids are like, "Hey, Dad, it's okay to cry. It's all right to cry." Like, and like his kids kind of being there for him, and it almost kind of shows that like he broke that generational curse. You know,
like
he's not going to be the same.
Yeah,
it's not going to be the same way for his kids as it was for him. And he's like, if you want to be a wrestler, like, you know what I mean? Like, you could just tell like he's going to be.
They both became wrestlers.
Yeah, I'm going to be a different dad for you. And his dream was that he said to, you know, Pam in the bar, he goes, I'm going to be a world champion. I'm going to make all this money, and I'm going to buy this big land, and you're going to be a vet, and you're going to be a working woman, and you're going to do your thing too, and we're going to be a successful couple. And we're both going to work really hard. We're going to buy big land, and everyone's going to live there, and we're going to all live on the same property. And even though he lost every one of his family members and everybody left, the new family that they established together, they bought a big land and they all lived on it. You know what I mean? Like, so even though he lost everything, he still kept his goal, which wasn't always the life of professional wrestling. It was to just be a good family.
Yep.
And that's kind of how the movie ends in the post-credit scene. And you've recently seen Kevin on AEW with both of his sons.
Yeah, Ross and Marshall have wrestled for AEW.
Yeah, and kind of relive, like during when the movie was coming out, they were promoting it, and it's just kind of showing that, like, you know, the guys went through a lot. And if you want to learn more about the story, please go check out Dark Side of the Ring. I think they do a really good job telling that story. Anything else here before we wrap up about this movie?
A little bit of myth busting, and this isn't something the movie actually handles this quite well, aside from like the timing being a little off. But there had constantly been rumors about David maybe having overdosed in Japan or something like that. But it seems like the consensus at this point of just what was going on with him is that David
it doesn't soften the blow of the death that he, you know what I mean?
Like, but he didn't. It seems like he did die of an intestinal rupture, and there was nothing substance abuse related with his passing. And that, because that's the one that kind of starts the domino effect of everything else, is like that tragedy of, well, I'm hurt, but I'm going to play hurt. I'm going to go to Japan. I'm going to tough it out. And that's where this kind of all starts to fall.
Yeah, I think overall I really like the movie. I think as a wrestling movie, I think it's good for the people to see, you know, the struggles of people who choose this lifestyle and how crazy this lifestyle is,
especially back then.
Yeah, especially back then.
Back then, you were living on the road. It was wild.
I think out of a 5-star rating system, with 2 being, you know, average good movie, 3 being, you know, good. 4 is like, I would rewatch this again. 5, it's a masterpiece. I don't think it's a masterpiece level, but I definitely think I don't think it's a movie I would seek out because how sad it is, and it's one of those ones like once you've seen it, you're like, all right, I experienced it. You know what I mean? So I would say maybe 3.5. I think it's a really good movie. If I had to watch it again with somebody, I would definitely have that experience with somebody and watch it again. I don't think it's one I would keep seeking out and watching over and over again. But I think it hits the points it needs to hit and tells the story. And I thought it was good. I thought it was a good wrestling movie.
I'd give it a 3. It's a good movie. It's probably the second best wrestling movie ever behind The Wrestler. Not that that's deep praise. Cassandra was very good. Cassandra came out earlier this year, but I think it's a good movie. I think the plot was a little uneven. I think it kind of got a little bit of a slow start, and then by the time it ramped up at the end, the deaths were coming so quickly, and all this hardship was coming one after another at the end, that it just kind of gave it like almost a numbing effect after a while for me. And I think a part of that is that this is a really hard movie, or a really hard story. The story of the Von Erichs. It's a really hard story to tell in 2 hours and change.
Yeah.
I think if you would have been able to do this as like a limited run series, and you would have given it like 6 or 8 hours of like episodes, I think it would have been phenomenal. Like it could, episode 1 could be whatever, but like, that way you could kind of like every episode you could kind of be devoted to that the story of that one brother almost. And for the amount of time they had to tell the story they were trying to tell, I think they did as good a job as you can expect. But it's a little tough because it's also Kevin's story, and a lot of what is happening around Kevin, not necessarily happening to him. So I think that kind of drags it down a little bit, but Kevin does kind of have to be the crux of the movie and the compass of the movie, because he's the one that survives. Like it can't be about Carrie. It can't be about because if it's about Carrie or Fritz, it's even more depressing. Because at least with Kevin, you do have that kind of heartwarming thing at the end of, it's him. Look, he does have that big house with his 4 kids and his 13 grandchildren, and they all do live together, and he did survive. But it's a good movie. I wouldn't say it's a great movie.
I definitely enjoyed it. MA in the chat says I think it's great for non-wrestling fans and very good for wrestling fans who already know the story. I would agree with that. I think one of the biggest things I remember taking out of this is people who watch Dark Side of the Ring, and people who watch the movie The Wrestler, and people who watch movies like this that are maybe not wrestling fans fully go, wow, like that was a really powerful story. Like that's probably the craziest story in professional wrestling, right? And you're like, it's up there, but there's a few other handful ones. You're like, what? I'm like, so if it opens the door for more stories of professional wrestling to kind of get out in biopics like this, I'm for it, because I think this industry has a lot of stuff that people should know and people can study and people can learn from.
I think it would be very interesting to see a movie about Bruiser Brody. That's like, I mean, he's a very small part of this movie. I think a Bruiser Brody movie, especially with the way he met his end, would be and it's a story you can kind of, I think, fit into 2 hours a lot better. I would be intrigued. Is there
any other movies out there that you would put out there,
like wrestling related movies? If on the spot, Brody is the one that would have sprung to my head more than Von Erichs, just because you know what story I would tell? I would tell Bret Hart's story. Okay, yeah. I mean, that's
tragedy. I mean, the guy's lost. Like that family went through loss. Pillman, Owen, Neidhart. Like that guy essentially watched everyone who was in his wrestling family die around him.
But there are other brothers who passed before.
Yeah.
Before Owen did.
I think you can do the same thing that you did with Kevin in this movie with Bret, and like going through his career and then his career-ending injury, getting screwed over by your boss in your home country.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of heartbreak to Bret Hart, and I always kind of pick on him because he's bitter and he's an old man and he's pissed off, but like he has a lot of reasons to be pissed off.
To be bitter, it's Bret Hart.
Yeah,
If anybody's doing that right.
Yeah, and I think Bret would be a decent wrestling movie for people to hear. Like like kind of shaping him up. Like, well, my dad was this kind of person. My mom was this kind of person. This is what I was raised in. I was raised in with men screaming for their lives in my basement.
Yeah.
Like kind of being bred tough, you know, and then watching people die, but still like kind of the show must go on. Like, that'd be a good movie.
One that was apparently in the works. That was
the Hatfield family.
Yeah, there you go.
I love that so much. That would be really good.
One that was apparently in the works, but I don't think it ever got off the ground. Really, was a biopic about Bruno Sammartino, because just his family story is incredible. I remember hearing an interview with him talking about it, and it was more about his mother and Bruno's mother and him. And Bruno grew up in northern Italy. He grew up in Abruzzi, Italy. And he grew up during World War II when the Nazis were allied with Italy. And I remember I remember him talking about how they would have to hide in the hills outside of their town, and his mother would sneak into town and steal food out of the houses the Nazis had taken over, because the Nazis had taken over all the houses in the town, and she would have to go in and steal food and then just bring it back up to them because they were hiding like a little cabin up in the mountains. And then he comes over and he's kind of sickly and very gangly and like just a weak child. And he discovers weightlifting and he gets into professional wrestling, and he initially gets blackballed by Vince McMahon Sr. He gets blackballed. And he has to go up to Canada to rebuild his name, and he becomes and he finally works his way back into the WWF and becomes Vince McMahon Sr.'s man, like the guy that he builds that company around for 15 years. I think a Bruno Sammartino movie would be very interesting too. I know the ones they're working on are Hogan. They've talked about a Hogan movie for a while. I don't know how factual that would be. I know they've talked about Chris Hemsworth playing Hogan.
I think Chris Hemsworth has been filming it and doing it. And if it's not coming out, it was definitely shot, because you know, he got huge in, I believe, Love and Thunder or whatever that movie was, like huge. Like he went for the actual size pythons. Like he went for it. Yeah.
I think they've always talked about a Vince McMahon biopic, but I think whoever's in control of that is going to be very indicative of how it would go. I think a story of ECW would be interesting, just kind of the machinations behind it and how this little renegade company of misfits kind of really reshaped what professional wrestling was. Would be a very interesting one too.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. I mean, you could probably take some of the early episodes of Dark Side of the Ring and make a movie out of those, and give it more time and to a different audience. But yeah, overall,
would really spring out to me though for that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. That's pretty much all we got when it comes to this. Make sure you tune in. I'm gonna almost pretty much say maybe Sunday night. If not, we'll find a way to do it. Maybe
we'll make it work.
We'll make it work. Maybe if we even switch up and do like a Monday night or something, maybe we'll figure something out. But we will do WCW Slamboree 94. So if you're watching this, go and watch it. Check it out on Peacock. Watch this show. Take some notes. Have some questions. Maybe tell us your takes on some matches on this pay-per-view, or matches that you liked, matches you hated. But definitely go check that out. Get prepared. And then get ready for, in 2 more weeks, the debut of the Tornado Tag What If series. And the first one will be, what if Ric Flair jumped to WWE in 1988?
Yep. And Ric Flair's in Slamboree 94 too. And again, I was there, so it's going to be it's a very core memory for me, because it was the first pay-per-view. Like, it was the first like televised event I was at. I had never been to a Raw before that or anything like that. I've been to house shows. It was like the first like televised.
I've been to Raws and SmackDowns, but my first pay-per-view ever was All In London.
There you go. That's a big one.
So that's my first pro wrestling pay-per-view. I left the country for it.
My second pay-per-view was King of the Ring 95, so it kind of bumped down from there. Yeah, that was rough. We're not gonna review that one next year, please. No.
Yeah. But
actually we could maybe if we got enough, like if there was like enough subscribers or patrons, that would make me watch King of the Ring 95 again, because I don't think I've watched this since I was there. It's awful. It's horrible.
Then Tuesday we'll be doing a movie review where I will be watching the movie Lighthouse, and we'll and be reviewing it with none other than Abs, baby. So myself and Abs will be reviewing Lighthouse, and then myself and Courtney will be on Thursday night doing Terrifier 2. So that's what to look forward to the rest of this week. I was going to do some live watch-alongs for Raw, AEW, and SmackDown. Unfortunately, with the live streams, man, it was like super chats are there, donations. I was doing that to essentially get more subscribers, donators, stuff like that. Maybe make a couple bucks by going live, get some watch hours. But I feel like with the YouTube thing being down, I'm going to wait until YouTube gets fixed where people can donate and grow before I go back to doing live watch alongs. But I'm still going to do this content. Like if no one tips or donates or I can't get something through that, I don't care. I like doing this. I want to keep the idea of the podcast going, and that's what this channel is for. But the other bonus stuff is just ways to maybe keep the lights on. If you want to help keep the lights on, t-shirts. I know we said we're going to do t-shirts on the 13th and rotate logos and all that, but I need you guys to know to change t-shirts and add new t-shirts and set everything up and resize everything and do everything you have to do on Teespring is insanely tedious. So to do it for 2 different logos, 15 different products each one is a lot of work. And I'm just going to keep it a buck. To do that every single month and make 0 sales is kind of disheartening. So I think there's plenty of logos up there you can buy. I think all the base logos are all available. Once we start selling some t-shirts and people start buying the shirts that are there, whether it's the Tornado Tag logo, the ABJ podcast logo, once they start selling and I see there's, people can afford it, the listeners are into it, we're getting that support, then I'll start dropping some bonus logos, and maybe you guys can start collecting them. I don't know if it's like times are tough, people can't afford things, or they just don't really want to wear podcast merch. Whatever it may be, I'm not offended by it, but I just feel like all the time I would put into redoing logos every month, I can be putting into maybe promoting more or making more clips or doing what I can to make the show better. So if you want bonus logos, that it's going to be one of those things where I think we're going to have to start showing that we're buying the other ones first before there has to be a demand for it. And it doesn't really seem like it's there just right yet. But that's pretty much all I got. BP, anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Upcoming, I think I mentioned I'll be at AXW this weekend. And then the big one for me is going to be, and unfortunately, I know you'll be doing some other stuff. Our buddies at New Era Pro Wrestling are going to be running on June 15th, but I will be at PPW where I do quite a bit, quite active there. And we are going to have Free Fallen is going to be our next show. And we announced this at the show on Sunday.
Is someone just on a Spotify playlist is making these posters up? What's happening here?
Right. No, I love that poster. It's actually, it looks like the Tom Petty album, The Free Fallen's on. It's amazing.
PPW in February will be, in July will be PPW Stairway to Heaven.
Hey, they're rocking black. They're rocking that classic rock playlist. It's been 10 years. They're running out of names of shows. Well, September's the anniversary show. It'll be PPW 11. We know that. So no, the big match was announced. We haven't really put it out on our social media yet, but we're among friends here. Our main event will be Diego Hill, the PPW heavyweight champion Facade, and Fuego del Sol will be in town. Fuego del Sol will be at PPW challenging for that heavyweight title. So that's going to be a real fun one.
And if you want to support companies like New Era, High Tension Wrestling, PPW, we do have tickets below on their websites that you can go and buy. If you buy them, send me a screenshot of your ticket, even if you can't. If you buy a ticket and you support them, even though you're physically not going to be there, send us a photo of the ticket stub so that we can tell people that, hey, this ticket's not physically for sale, so you can go and do that. PPW, I asked them, they said what you do is write in your ticket sale donation, and Paul will then know to then say donation from the ABJ podcast. Put that in the comment. This way BP gets a little love because he essentially sold a ticket for the show. And you're helping support local wrestling even though you physically can't be there. Same with New Era. If there's a comment section, say donation from the ABJ podcast, or just send us a screenshot of the ticket so that we can then show the powers that be, and we can use this platform to not only help ourselves out, but maybe help some local independent wrestling grow. If we got to this far in the episode, make sure if you're listening on the audio platform, you're hitting that 5-star review, you're sharing it out. Take a screenshot of the YouTube channel if you're watching it later or what you're watching, and tag myself and BP and just say, hey, love the episode. I would love this for a future What If episode, or I would love you guys to review this show, or maybe talk about this topic. Let's talk on social media. Let's all become some friends. Follow us, tweet at us, message us, DM us, whatever it may be. But let's get some more word of mouth out about the show. We have some really cool stuff. there's a lot of prep that's going to start going into the show, especially in the What If series. And I really, really think we're finding our stride here at Tornado Tag Podcast. And I really, really appreciate you guys. But let's get the word of mouth spreading out there. Let's grow this channel. Let's get some people out. Tell some people about it. Like, hey, I know you're getting into wrestling now, but I think these two guys do a really good job of telling you some old historic stuff that you can, still keep relevant to today. So like, we try to keep even the history stuff relevant to what's still currently happening. Like we did the history of Dusty, because you can learn more about Dusty before Cody won the belt. Like, so we're very strategic about still doing the history, but doing it in the time frame that it's appropriate, if that makes sense. We keep the Thanksgiving history around Thanksgiving. We keep, you know what I mean? Like we try to do that for you guys. So it maybe makes you a more educated wrestling fan, or maybe makes you scratch that nostalgic itch that you want to go back and rewatch some of these matches. That being said, BP, can you watch these old WW or WCWW shows on the Peacock
world
or
class
like
stuff?
That? Yeah,
I believe some of the world class stuff is on Peacock. I'm not sure how much of it is, because WWE did wind up buying the world class video library, so I'm not sure exactly how much they have. I know, like they're it's funny. One of their big shows would be around Christmas time, I believe, or maybe Thanksgiving, but they would literally just call it Star Wars. And I believe some of the Star Wars shows were on at least in the past on Peacock. I don't know if I'm actually trying to log into Peacock now and see if I can quick check this, but I know that they did have a DVD that came out in the age where they do a lot of those documentary DVDs. They did have the Triumph and Tragedy of World Class. It looks like it looks like they at the very least have a few episodes, not a few episodes. They have a lot of episodes of World Class Championship Wrestling, the weekly TV. So you can see a lot of the Von Erichs. Yeah, it looks like they have literally, I did not realize this, hundreds of episodes from 1982 through 1988. So you're going to get the heyday of 82. So here it is, like Kevin and Kerry Von Erich take on Armand Hussein and Tim Brooks. Big Daddy Bundy, who I'm assuming is King Kong Bundy, against the Monk. Kerry Von Erich faces the Great Kabuki. Kevin Von Erich takes on Carlos Zapata. So it looks like a lot of those groundbreaking early 80s weekly TV shows that I might even take a look at this. I've always heard were these groundbreaking shows. I mean, obviously now they're going to look dated. They're 40 plus years old, but they were so cutting edge at the time. So you can really kind of look at the weekly TV through the heyday of the Von Erichs, which is really like 1982 to probably, 1984, because that's when David passes, but 1982 to 1986, because they still had some juice with Mike. Mike wasn't David, but they still had some juice because Kerry was one of the biggest stars in wrestling at that point. Kevin was always Kevin. I mean, and I guess they do a decent job of putting this. And I'm not trying to be mean, but Kevin really probably wasn't on the level of David or Kerry, but he was really solid. He was somebody you could always keep that territory moving with. He was a great regional champion. He was a great main event babyface for the territory, but I don't know if he had that NWA World Champion chops that David and Kerry had.
Yeah, so go watch some stuff. Let us know if you come across an old episode you think we should check out, or an old Von Erich match you think we should watch. Future episodes, hit us up. Message us on social media. Tweet at us. Let's have some fun. But we're going to get out of here. Here's some music by the Converse Kid. I know this is not the Tornado Tag Podcast. We will bring it back for the next episode, I promise. We love you guys. We'll see you on the next one.
This is an ABJ podcast production. Join us. Would you kindly join us at the Cult of ABJ Discord community? We'll see you there. Join us.